So we are now officially launching this event.
Bien, vamos a comenzar con este evento.
Sorry, we had the... No, I have the floor. I have original floor.
Parece que hubo una complicación técnica.
No, I think floor you are... She's... I am with the floor here.
She might not be in.
Flo, I don't think you are speaking on your channel, so please check. Because we could hear, everybody could hear you. So once this is set up, we will launch this event.
Yes, hello. I have no controls to change languages or where I send my interpretation to.
I'm sorry, but I cannot help you because I'm not in the channel. So now everybody can hear you. So
Yeah, but I have no control over that. I have no control, so you have to switch.
you know you are the one who is there.
But see, WebEx doesn't offer the interpreters control over the channels, the tracks they use to interpret into.
But here I see that you are on the channel, and I cannot. There's not much I can do. And now we have already lost 2 minutes. What do we do?
If you don't want.
So colleagues, let's move on. We should have tested that before, but okay, we need to, sorry. It's already 33 past 4 Geneva time. We are now officially launching this event. Excellencies, delegates and colleagues, thank you for joining one of the 22 online events organized as part of the 6th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Minamata Convention on Mercury, which we'll be referring to as COP6, which is kicking off early next month in Geneva, and we look forward to welcoming those of you who are not based here in Geneva then. The Geneva Environment Network will be hosting 2 other of these events on Thursday, and stay with us until the end to hear what you can join later this week. Today's session was proposed by the International Pollutants Elimination Network, known as IPEN, and will be moderated by Leah Esquillo, who is the program director for IPEN. And before I give her the floor, I would like to share some housekeeping rules. I would like to remind everybody that the documents presented, the summary, as well as the video of the event will be made available as usual on the webpage of the event. The event is offering interpretation to Spanish and to French. I hope this is working. You can access it to the globe that is at the bottom left of your screen. You also have the transcript available in
También
other languages,
la transcripción en otros.
as indicated in this slide, and you are invited to post questions in the Q&A box too. We will use them to feed the discussion if time allows. And with that, Leah, Mrs. Killo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diana. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants joining from around the world. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And I'm sorry about the problems with the translations. We wanted to have Spanish and French translations. This event focuses on one of the Minamata Convention's most urgent challenges: how to accelerate the end of both legal and illegal mercury supply and trade, and its use in ASGM, or artisanal and small-scale gold mining. We are fortunate to be joined by an excellent panel of experts and community leaders who will bring perspectives from human rights, science, policy, and lived experience. These are all essential to making the Minamata Convention more effective and just. As Diane said, please post your questions in the Q&A box at any time. As we might not have time for an open discussion, please, speakers, you may also respond directly in that space. So I would also like to remind our dear speakers to not speak too fast because, well, we have translations. We hope we're able to fix it, and to speak within your time. Okay, let us now begin. So we are honored to start with Dr. Marcos Aureliana, United Nations Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights. Dr. Aureliana will share insights on ASGM, human rights, and the need to strengthen the Minamata Convention, drawing from his 2020 report on mercury, ASGM, and human rights implications. Dr. Aureliana, you have 10 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Leah, and thank you to IPEN and the Geneva Environment Network for inviting me to join you here today. I wish to start by pointing out that the Minamata Convention is certainly a chemicals treaty, but it's not only a chemicals treaty, and that is because small-scale gold mining aggravates the triple planetary crisis. If we look at toxification of our planet, the persistent and the hazardous characteristics of mercury are at play. The impacts on indigenous peoples and miners often living in poverty is something that connects with the toxification of our planet. But there's also biodiversity loss, the loss of ecosystems, the impairment of environmental health, the proliferation of sacrifice zones around the world. And there's also climate change involved, with deforestation issues rampant, where roads are being built and impacts on the forests because of small-scale gold extraction. All of this together has serious implications for the effective enjoyment of fundamental human rights: the right to life, the right to health, the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, both in relation to exposure to mercury, as well as the violence that surrounds small-scale gold mining, forced sexual exploitation, slavery-like practices, and displacement of indigenous communities that speak up or mobilize in defense of their rights. And so to address the threats posed at a global level by small-scale gold mining and mercury more generally, the Minamata Convention was negotiated. And I would like to point out, as I have in the past, that the Minamata Convention continues to be the youngest multilateral environmental agreement in the family of MEAs around the world. And I mention that because it has incorporated lessons learned from decades of treaty making in this area. A couple examples: the Minamata Convention adopts a whole life cycle approach. The Minamata Convention also incorporates an effectiveness evaluation that may lead then to its strengthening. The Minamata Convention was premised on a vision, the vision that global mercury trade was necessary at the time to enable transition away from mercury, a gradual transition. So what has changed over the years and in regards to that vision? Well, in terms of context, the price of gold has skyrocketed. But more to the point of implementation of Minamata, as IPEN's most recent October report on mercury exposure of women in 2 Latin American gold mining countries documents, nearly all mercury uses that were existing at the time of the Minamata Convention and negotiations have been phased out or significantly phased down. A couple examples: skin lightening creams, fluorescent lamps, they have been included in schedules and are being phased out. Phased out of certain technologies, the production of chlorine using mercury cells, so chloralkali facilities. We could also mention the expiry of exemptions, or the imminent expiry of exemptions is one thing that has changed. And so all of this leads to the assertion that the Minamata Convention is robust and it is working. It is working as intended, except when it comes to small-scale gold mining, which is by far the largest source of emissions and releases of mercury to the environment. By the last count in 2018, the 38% of emissions of mercury to the atmosphere came from or come from small-scale gold mining, which is by far beyond the 21% of the following source of emissions of combustion of coal. And all of that is resulting in environmental injustices at a global scale. Now, why is it that Minamata is not working when it comes to small-scale gold mining as opposed to all other facets of? Well, there are certain gaps in the treaty, and there's a number of them, and I document these and examine them in the report that Leah mentioned, which I presented to the General Assembly back in 2020. First of all, primary mercury mining is continuing to be allowed. There's phase-out periods or deadlines, but what wasn't anticipated is that there would be an increase in production of existing mines. This, coupled with lack of traceability in the instrument, so once the mercury leaves the mine and then is exported, there's basically no means of tracing where it ends up. I'll come back to that issue in a minute. And there's also lack of responsibilities for gold importing states. And so there's issues of required due diligence on refineries and so forth. So that's a big gap that undermines the effectiveness of the treaty in this respect. Another one is that small-scale gold mining is an allowed use for mercury, and this has several implications. One of them is that it allows international trade and it creates a global market. Now, this trade is often diverted to fuel the supply for small-scale gold mining. And that is because of weaknesses in customs regimes, what I mentioned about lack of traceability, or outright corruption. Secondly, legal trade is subject to consistency with Article 7, which concerns small-scale gold mining. But some states are not in compliance with Article 7. For example, they have not presented a national action plan as they are required to do. And so there is a role for the Compliance Committee of the Convention to look at this issue systematically or systemically. And the result of these gaps is widespread and severe human rights violations in various parts of the world, in the Amazon, in West Africa, in Southeast Asia, and elsewhere. And thus the gaps need to be closed for the Minamata Convention to deliver its promise of no more Minamatas around the world. And the effectiveness evaluation process leading to COP7 offers a good opportunity to do that. Now, there are various arguments that are often presented in this debate, in that the Minamata Convention does not favor a prohibition approach, but a gradual transition away from mercury in small-scale gold mining, such as sustainable development approach. Now, this could be considered a conceptual argument, assumes that the sustainable development or sustainable development goals and human rights are in opposition, and that is not the case. Human rights are a baseline for sustainable development and the sustainable development goals, and so any gradual transition must be made in full observance of the human rights obligations of states parties to Minamata. A second argument is that Minamata needs time to deliver. It needs to be given a chance to work. However, as noted above or previously, there are gaps in Minamata design. And so every day that small-scale gold mining continues to release and mercury into the environment that aggravates the problem. It cannot forget that mercury cannot be wished away. It's a highly persistent element. A third argument is that Minamata's annex on small-scale gold mining sets minimum standards. Now, that is certainly true, but it's not an argument to avoid closing the gaps. Instead, it is an argument for strengthening, for refining the role of the global environment facility that's funding these generations of national action plans. And finally, that countries that have banned mercury still suffer from the problem, and that shows that prohibition approach does not work. It simply fuels illegal markets, it legalizes trade and otherwise illegal products. And so that's an argument that that points to that states that have banned mercury are still suffering from the problem because of the international lack of cooperation. And so that points again to the gaps in Minamata and the need to treat mercury as a form of environmental crime. In 30 seconds, I will conclude by pointing out that small-scale gold mine disproportionately impacts people that are most vulnerable in society, indigenous peoples, minors living in poverty. Second, that Minamata is a robust agreement, that it's working except on small-scale gold mining, and that is resulting in serious human rights violations. And finally, that the effectiveness evaluation offers an important opportunity to close the gaps of Minamata and strengthen the convention. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marcos, for your powerful presentation and emphasizing the gaps, in relation to the treaty, in relation to ASGM, result to human rights issues. Yeah, and that your call to align treaty measures with human rights obligations, that the need to address these gaps truly sets the tone for today's discussion. So thank you very much. Now we proceed. We welcome Ms. Yuyun Ismawati, IPEN co-chairperson, an ASGM expert, and founder of Nexus 3 Foundation in Indonesia, a 2009 Goldman Prize awardee. Yuyun will speak about the global mercury trade, its connection with ASGM, and the need for amendments to the Minamata Convention. Yuyun, you have 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Leah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. And thanks, Marcos, for providing the background and the importance of a human rights perspective in this issue. I would like to start with this picture. The lady, she's the owner of a food stall, but yet she also sells mercury in her shops. And where she puts these bottles is under her bed in her bedroom. So her bedroom's full with maybe 50 bottles of mercury. So when I entered the room of her bedroom under the bed, I could smell the vapor. I don't know how she sleeps. She sleeps in the evening. So with that, I would like to continue to the next slide, please. Let's just skip this one. This is just to introduce IPEN. We are a global network, and this is my organization in Indonesia. Next, please. Yeah, so Minamata Convention, we knew about this, and up until today, 153 countries already ratified. Some of them are mercury or cinnabar mining cinnabar mining owners, but also mercury producer and importer exporters. Next, please. So beside the ASGM use as the highlight of in Minamata Convention, the convention prohibits the opening of new mercury mines. That's clearly stated in the text, and then close the existing mercury mine within 15 years after enter into force, meaning 2032. and then ban or phase down some mercury added products, and then control mercury emissions from industrial sources, and safely manage mercury waste and enforce responsible storage. This is going to be an interesting topic in relation to confiscated mercury. Next slide, please. The trade of mercury by volumes and by values has been changed since 2000. In year 2000, the price of gold was high because of the economic turmoil in many countries since 1980, 1980 until 2000. That marked the high volumes of mercury trade. But the price is not that high at that time. But this is also affected by the price of gold. Next slide, please. So in 2012, it's a busy chart. If you see by volumes, you can see the flow of mercury trade from one country to another. And this is due to anticipations by traders that Minamata Convention is going to be adopted in 2013. So everyone is dumping mercury to other countries. And then this is also the period where the EU and the US enacted the mercury export ban. And the value of the trade in 2012 is the highest, reached up until 232 million. Next, please. So 10 years after that, after Minamata Convention entered into force, and then some sectors already phased down or phased out, we can see the trade and the volumes and the values of the trade has been down. So it's only down to 1.7 tons every year. And the price is also, the global trade is only 33 million. It's nothing compared to other commodities. So there is no reason to continue this, this trade. However, we might see the increase in mercury trade and values due to the increased price of gold. Next, please. So the ASGM sector, as we knew, sorry, I forgot to put the source. This is from Cholker et al. As Marcos already highlighted, that the ASGM sector is the highest user and emitter of mercury to extract gold. And this is affecting more than 70 countries, more than 20 million people involved. And we started seeing a lot of health issues in those countries. Next, please. Neil Vasu et al. Also highlighted that the population groups with relatively high exposures to mercury and its compound have been identified as ASGM communities and indigenous peoples, and also general fish consumers. And this is concerning because the mercury exposures will be increasing, and the mercury released to the environment will be readily methylated, and it will be easily absorbed by fish and by animals and all the microorganisms that will increase and spread out the pollution of mercury, threatening not only the food chain, but also the biodiversity. That this is need to be controlled and reduced. Next, please. So Marcos already highlighted the use allowed term in Article 2 and also Article 7. We can see in under the Article 2 use allowed, if you see point K down there, including use allowed is include also Article 7. Article 7 is addressing artisanal small-scale gold mining and also linked to Annex C. But as Marcos already mentioned, it needs to be stronger and strengthened. So in the Minamata Convention, every efforts have a sunset date except for artisanal small-scale gold mining. I remember the discussions was very tough, and many countries still wanted to continue the use because they look for the livelihood of the people. But this is the one that concerns us most because it's like a competition between gold mining and gold versus health. Next, please. At COP4 in Bali, the Indonesian government introduced what they call it as the Bali Declaration to combat the illegal trade of mercury, because Indonesia experienced a lot of illegal trade of mercury. And also after 2013, Indonesia sourced the mercury from some islands to supply the needs and demand of the ASGM miners. With this declaration, Indonesia called for collaboration, support, and cooperations with all parties and also international agencies like Interpol to support the eradication of illegal trade of mercury. So we will see this discussion at COP6 further, how to strengthen the Bali Declaration and support for countries, especially that suffer from the impact of the illegal trade of mercury. Next slide, please. So from the perspective of IPAN, we see that the amendment is possible, especially if protecting health is our main concern. So we can take a look at the Article 2 for the amendment, started with Article 2 to delete Article 7 from paragraph K, so it will not be included under the use allowed. And then under Article 3, paragraph 4, that the period of primary mercury mining should be less than 15 years, because now it's already a lot of efforts to replace mercury for gold extraction. So there is no excuse to keep 15 years allowing mercury mining after entered into force. And then under Article 3, paragraph 4 also, parties should permit the export of mercury only for disposal. This is to close the gap where mercury trade is diverted into small-scale gold mining. And then Article 3, para 8, parties should not allowed to import mercury from non-parties to avoid and to close the gap for free riders. Next slide, please. So the amendment also have to be linked to Article 7, which should be mandated or require countries with artisanal small-scale gold mining to reduce and eliminate the use of mercury within 3 to 5 years, and to encourage countries to speed up the process of phasing out of mercury in gold mining. And then in para C, where in Annex C, para 2, where every country suggested or encouraged to develop national action plan, this should be mandatory because right now already a lot of countries receiving support from the GEF and also from donors to develop national action plans, but need to be strengthened in terms of monitoring and review the implementations of national action plan. And also this is supposed to be linked to the Article 7. It has to be phased out by 3 to 5 years. Next slide, please. So it's time for parties to set the phase-out date for artisanal for mercury use in artisanal small-scale gold mining, especially because we recognize that mercury use in ASGM is a combination of legal and illegal trade from illegal sources, and also cinnabar conversion to mercury from the primary mines. And then we also see that the mercury use in ASGM sector undermines the human rights of indigenous peoples and other vulnerable populations. And the use of the continued use of use allowed of mercury for ASGM will send signal that gold extraction is more important than human rights. So the convention needs to send a clear message that mercury use in ASGM will no longer be tolerated by establishing the phase-out date of 2032. Thank you. So that's it. Thank you for joining the call today. Looking forward to have the discussions. Back to you, Leah.
Thank you very much, Yu Yun, for clearly explaining how the legal mercury trade is still fueling ASGM, and also for clearly enumerating what are the amendments necessary, amendments to the Minamata Convention necessary to close this loophole, and in order to protect people's health and protect the human rights. So thank you very much. Now we move on. Our next speaker is Mr. Lee Bell. Lee is IPEN's technical and policy advisor, who will present IPEN's new biomonitoring findings among indigenous communities in Peru and Nicaragua, focusing on mercury exposure in women of childbearing age and its implications for global health and policy. So Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Leah. I am hoping we can bring my slides up so that I can speak a little bit more about the newly released report. And there's my presentation. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for the behind-the-scenes work that's going on here to keep all of the technology functioning, and appreciate the comments by the previous speakers. So a new report is being released today on mercury body burden of Indigenous women of childbearing age in active ASGM regions of Peru and Nicaragua by the International Pollutants Elimination Network. And I believe there's a link in the chat so that you can reach that. Next slide, please. So the new mercury biomonitoring report released by IPEN involves sampling conducted between 2023 and 2024 by local IPEN participating organizations in Peru and Nicaragua. We conducted hair sampling with 105 Indigenous women of childbearing age in 6 communities who participated in this study. There was four communities in Peru with 55 women who participated, and there were 2 communities and 50 women in Nicaragua. All of them lived along river systems with active ASGM activity, and all of the women had fish-rich diets from local rivers, many of them eating fish daily multiple times. Previous studies of the rivers indicated that the fish were contaminated with mercury above consumption guidelines in many cases. The sampling analysis was by the Biodiversity Research Institute in Portland, USA, and the report and summary can be accessed via the IPEN webpage. Next slide, please. So the key findings of the report was that of the 105 Indigenous women participants, levels of mercury in 88% exceeded the current 1 ppm US EPA threshold level, beyond which negative effects may be detected in a developing fetus of a pregnant woman. Mercury levels in more than 99% of women who participated exceeded the 0.58 ppm level, which is a recently derived level proposed by experts due to evidence of potential harmful effects from lower levels of mercury on the cognitive development of the fetus. And we'll show a little bit later a couple of graphs that show where both of these levels sit. And although the 0.58 ppm level is not yet an official threshold, we believe that science is moving towards adopting this type of level as it's more reflective of harm occurring, particularly for the unborn fetus. The women of the 4 Peruvian indigenous communities where sampling took place had highly elevated levels of mercury in their hair, with a mean of 3.4 ppm plus or minus 2.08 ppm fresh weight as a standard deviation. On average, this exceeds the current threshold level for harmful effects on a developing fetus of pregnant women by more than 3 times. The women of the Nicaraguan indigenous communities had elevated levels, but not as high, with total mercury in their hair with a mean of 1.54 ppm and a standard deviation of 0.85 ppm. On average, this was more than 1.5 times above the current potential fetal harm level. Next slide, please. In Peru, the 55 hair samples were from women of childbearing age in 4 adjacent indigenous communities along a 50-kilometre section of the Rio Madre de Dios in an active ASGM area. The communities are not named in the report and are referred to as Community 1 to 4 for security reasons that were raised with us by those communities that developed in recent times. You can see to the left, or you can see the small photos on the screen show the tailings pits that are left behind by miners. There are dredges and sluices on the rivers. There are various different types of ASGM activity occurring along the river. A previous report that we conducted in Bolivia led us to notice that 2 communities of indigenous people, something like 300 kilometers apart on the River Beni, were showing elevated levels of mercury contamination at almost the same level between the 2 communities, and they had almost exactly the same dietary consumption of river fish, which led us to believe that rivers are acting as a conduit for mercury contamination of the food chain, and that although ASGM may occur in one part of the river, the fish obviously travel and it can impact people right along those river systems. And that's why we decided to look at indigenous communities in these areas that were bounded by the same river system. Next slide, please. So local staff and NGOs from FENAMAD took hair samples from female participants in indigenous communities along the river, the Madre de Dios River in Peru, and they were operating to a standard methodology that IPEN has been using for over 10 years and developed in concert with BRI laboratories to ensure consistency between results and comparability of data. Next slide, please. The comparison of the results in the report is with established mercury thresholds, that being the 1 ppm level, which the US EPA uses as a reference dose for mercury in hair. As you can see, this is just an example of what a chart might look like, with a solid red bar for the 1 ppm level and a dotted red line showing the proposed level of 0.58 ppm, which may be adopted in the future. Next slide, please. So in terms of the 4 indigenous communities in Peru, you can see the data as well as the charts that show how much the levels were exceeding the 1 ppm threshold and the 0.58 ppm potential threshold for the future. Most of the community exceeded that by a high level. In many cases, we were encountering very high levels, such as 3, 4, up to 9 ppm and above in those communities. And from our detailed dietary surveys based around fish consumption, we found that seemed to be a correlation between those who ate more fish and their body burden of mercury. Next slide, please. In Nicaragua, there were 2 communities involved. That's the Lilamni and Liobra communities, and I hope I pronounced those correctly. The samples were taken in these 2 communities in northern Nicaragua along tributaries of the Rio Coco, which is also known as the Wangi River, and they based on tributaries of that major river, which is the Rio Umbra and the Rio Westbrook. And you can see in the map on one side of the screen there are many indigenous communities who are spaced throughout this region and who also live along the river systems there. So this was really the same as the Peru study, was a pilot study to see what was occurring in those areas. Next slide, please. These are dietary surveys being conducted with participants in Lilamni in Nicaragua. The local participating organizations from IPEN and their associates would go out and hold workshops in the communities, explain the purpose of the sampling, and then conduct detailed dietary surveys before and collect identification data before actually taking a hair sample and bagging it and fulfilling the protocols of the sample collection. Next slide, please. The results from two indigenous communities in Nicaragua can be seen here, compared again against the 1 ppm threshold and the dotted line for the 0.58 ppm threshold. And while the average levels were around 1.5 ppm, there were certainly much higher levels encountered, up to 4.64 ppm in one of the villages and 3.57 ppm in the other village. Next slide, please. So when we compare the results between the Peruvian cohort and the Nicaraguan cohort, we can see that the Peruvian group had a much higher body burden on average than the Nicaraguan group, but both exceeded the safe guidelines and both could be attributed to fish consumption, though it should be noted that in the Nicaraguan group, there was a lot more crabs and prawns and other shellfish eaten compared to the groups in Peru who were solely eating fish. And this can have some effect on the mercury levels, as in many cases, prawns and crabs have lower mercury levels generally than fish, but in some cases they can also be very high. So that requires Could we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. And I'll be wrapping up with recommendations. Oop, it's disappeared. There we go. What we are recommending is that health interventions should be undertaken in these and surrounding communities, as we assume the river systems are affected, into other communities, to assess the symptoms of mercury exposure, provide treatment and mercury exposure reduction strategies, including alternate dietary intake where that's possible. There should be a national intervention to end illegal gold mining in these regions and prohibit the use of mercury in legal gold mining. I know Peru has done a lot in this respect, including major interventions involving military and environment officials to crack down on illegal gold mining, but it's clearly still a problem in some of these areas, and more needs to be done. There should be a development of a sustainable national mining and resource conservation policies in cooperation with Indigenous representatives who are having difficulty and challenges in having their voice heard over these issues. And we do need to see a strengthening of the Minamata Convention soon by prohibiting the global trade in mercury. The EU and the US have done this now for over a decade without any problem. And we need to establish a phase-out date of 2032 for ASGM as an allowable use of mercury. And finally, to accelerate the phase-out date for primary mercury mining to something like 2027 to cut off the supply that's feeding ASGM. Next slide, please. And that's just to thank you for your attention. And that's just an image of one of the large sluices operating on the Madre de Dios River to extract gold. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll hand it back to Leah.
Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you for sharing the results of the biomonitoring study done by IPEN with partner NGOs and communities. The results are very alarming, but important for us to know that this is happening, to remind us of the urgency for closing the loopholes in the Mercury Treaty. So thank you again, Lee, for sharing the report. So let's move on, dear friends. We now turn to Mr. Adam Dolezal, Extractive Industries Campaigner at the EIA, Environmental Investigation Agency in the United States. Adam will share EIA's findings from its investigation into mercury smuggling routes between Mexico and Peru. Adam, you have the floor. Please proceed.
Thank you, Leah, and hello to all the participants. And it's great to be on such an amazing panel. I feel like at EIA, the Environmental Investigation Agency US side, we are very much standing on the shoulders of giants in mercury work. IPEN, whose legacy is going back many years. I feel like we're really happy to be part of it, contribute. I'm hoping that the slides are able to come up on the EIA side. There we go. So as Leah said, I'm a campaigner at EIA, which means I really push to make the findings of our investigations stick, make them translate into social and policy change. And we have a recent investigation release and report, which highlights the mercury smuggling supply chain between Mexico and several Amazon countries, which I'm going to talk about today. Next slide, please. As a quick background, you may be familiar with EIA. If not, we really formed our roots and work in the environmental space in our different campaigns. We've focused for many decades on illegal timber trafficking, wildlife trafficking. EIA was founded in the UK and moved to the US about 40 years ago. And our emphasis is really on exposing environmental crimes through investigative techniques. So next slide. So this investigation, which I want to discuss with you today, took place over 3 years. EIA really takes its time in these investigations. It's a process of really trying to embed oneself within the industry and gain certain access to information that wouldn't otherwise be available. And that's what we did in this case. We were able to uncover some of the more minute details within a mercury trade between Mexico and several Amazon countries through trade analysis, through looking at trade data, mostly maritime shipping and that sort of thing, as well as undercover approaches. We also collaborated in this process with enforcement authorities, environmental enforcement and customs agents within Colombia, Peru, with coordination from US agencies as well, which ultimately resulted in the seizure of 4 tons of mercury. And this seizure was enacted by the customs authority in Peru called SUNAT. And it did end up being one of the largest, or the largest reported seizure of primary mined mercury going into an Amazon country. Next slide, please. So the traffic of mercury into Latin America within smuggling networks is considerable. Illegal mining in the Amazon, of course, as we've been hearing and as we well know, is highly dependent on this illegal traffic. We knew going into the investigation that there were significant flows of mercury from outside of kind of the Western Hemisphere, coming from parts of China, Eurasia, via the Middle East and Dubai and that sort of thing. But we really decided to focus in on Mexico as a major trafficking hub. Within Mexico, there's export routes on both the east and west coast of Mexico, which lands the mercury, whether on the east or west coast in South America. Our investigation revealed within this single supply chain that we looked into that between April 2019 and June 2025, there were approximately 200 tons of mercury that were hidden within different projects and products and within different shipping routes going into Amazon countries, primarily Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. And as a result, one conservative estimate is that the production of gold based on this mercury led to upwards of 8 billion in value of illegal gold at today's gold prices, which, as we know, just crossed the $4,000 mark. Overall, we estimate an annual export of primary mine mercury underground from Mexico at around 100 tons annually. So this amount that was being trafficked is somewhere between 30 and 40%. Next slide, please. Okay, so the production of mercury in this area of Mexico is very concentrated. There are around 19 different mines, but what we confirmed through our field investigation and engagement with traffickers on the ground is that there's actually about 4 mines only which are responsible for the vast majority, somewhere around 85% of this production. Next slide, please. You can see a picture here of the footprint of the mercury mines. And this is in a high kind of desert area in Querétaro in Mexico. It's central Mexico, north of Mexico City. The mine footprints are significant, and there's several local and immediate impacts, such as seasonal rains and flooding in the drainage systems there. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the process of moving the mercury. One thing that we discovered throughout our investigation is that several of the highly productive mines are actually controlled by cartels that are listed in the U.S. and elsewhere as FTOs since February of last year. We also discovered on the Colombia side, where the primary mine mercury is being received, that the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia are responsible as well in receiving or involved in some sense in receiving the mercury. And just like Lee discussed, this region of Madre de Dios in Peru, there are other organized criminal groups that are involved in this trafficking on the Peru receiving side. Next slide. This is an image of an observation tower in a cartel-controlled mine in Mexico, in which there were armed guards. Made it tricky in terms of access. Next slide. So in terms of the logistics of how it all works and the details, the liquid mercury from the mines in Mexico are actually mixed with a very fine crushed rock or gravel. And this gravel has a very fine kind of powder dust associated with it, in which the mercury is absorbed. And so visually, you're not able to confirm the presence of the mercury. It's a pretty simple washing process to remove it from the crushed rock or gravel. But in terms of shipping it, it's a pretty solid way that is difficult to detect, except for by methods of vapor detection, which is how we ended up finding the mercury. Next slide, please. These are the gravel bags in the shipping container, of which only a small percentage contained mercury. It was somewhere around a quarter of the bags contained the mercury, but not all of them. Next slide.
Adam, we lost your. We can't hear you, Adam.
We can, Leah, we
Can you hear
can.
me now? Yeah, I noticed
Yes.
with Lee in the last presentation that there was some dropping out, so might be happening on my side too. Are we good?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm actually ready to wrap up anyways, to keep, because I know that we're getting close on time. But I just wanted to circle back to what impact we want this to make within the Minamata Convention and within the parties themselves. The EIA approach to Minamata is very much in line with other speakers on the panel and IPAN, and that we would like to see the removal of the ASGM from allowable uses to close what we see as the world's biggest loophole in the trafficking of primary mined mercury. Under the convention, we would like to also see that that there are certain recommendations we want to bring in terms of digitizing trade consent protocols. This is something we will discuss at our side event at the convention. We also want to really look at the feasibility of a pilot project for the drawdown and mine closure of primary mines in Mexico. I would align with Lee's statement that the 2032 deadline for closure within the process in Mexico, which has already been established through the JEF and the UNEP, is not soon enough. Looking at an expedited process is very much within the interest of the affected countries in the Amazon, as well as the people in Mexico. A 2027 phase out is very much what we'd like to lean towards as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adam, and the powerful investigative work of EIA. No, it's really an eye-opener. No, how you uncovered and showed the illegal mercury trade routes that are still operating even under the global treaty framework. So very powerful and instructive. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you.
So we now go to our last presenter. We are honored to hear from Mr. Julio Cusurichi, indigenous leader of the Shipibo people of the Madre de Dios region in the Peruvian Amazon and a member of the governing council of IDOZEP, the National Indigenous Organization of the Peruvian Amazon. A 2007 Goldman Environmental Prize awardee. We have 2 Goldman Prize laureates in the panel. Julio will share his perspectives on the impacts of mercury contamination and ASGM on indigenous communities in Peru. Julio, we give you a few minutes. Thank you. You have the floor.
Sí, buenas noches. No sé si me escuchan. Hola.
Sí, puede dar avance.
Sí, buenas noches con todos. Primero agradecer a IPEN por la invitación. Como indicaron, yo me llamo Julio Cusurichi. Soy un indígena de la Amazonía del Perú, del pueblo indígena Shipibo. Ahora miembro de una organización indígena que se llama AIDZ a nivel de la Amazonía peruana, ¿no? En verdad me siento muy contento de ser parte de panelista con distinguidos personajes que conocen muy bien este tema del impacto de la minería, ¿no? Si podemos avanzar, un poco vamos a hablar cómo impacta esta minería, ¿no? En la región de Madre de Dios, ¿no? Por ejemplo, ahí miramos la región de Madre de Dios, es un 60% está con territorios de áreas naturales protegidas y territorios indígenas. Por ejemplo, esas áreas verdes son territorios, ¿no? De reservas comunales, reservas territoriales, áreas naturales protegidas, y las que están en lila son territorios de pueblos indígenas, ¿no? Entonces, si miramos, continuamos, vamos a mirar cómo esta actividad de minería, ¿no? Contrapone, se superpone a nuestros territorios. Y esto es porque el gobierno peruano otorga concesiones sin interesarle nuestros derechos. Mira, ahí podemos ver, en algunas comunidades el 100% del territorio está superpuesto a concesiones mineras, ¿no? Y esto produce pues impactos, grandes impactos en los territorios, contaminación de los ríos, depredación, conflictos, ¿no? Y como podemos ver, por ejemplo, en el caso de, continuamos, en el caso de Mar de Dios, comunidades que están haciendo su gobernanza territorial, ¿no? Son a través de veedores, ¿no? La organización indígena Mar de Dios, que es FENAMAT, cuenta con veedores, podemos pasar adelante, cuentan con veedores, ¿no? Que ven los territorios, pero sin embargo estos veedores son amenazados, ¿no? Por los mineros cuando se monitorean los territorios. Si podemos, si me puede ayudar, puede pasarla adelante. Y ahí pues hay una gran amenaza. Por ejemplo, hay unas comunidades que hacen el control, que hacen la gobernanza del territorio, son amenazados, incluso son casi ya quemados en en algún momento, ¿no? Y ahí también, por ejemplo, guardaparques son muertos, ¿no? Por las personas que trabajan esta actividad minera en estos lugares de Mar de Dios. Entonces, este es un tema muy complicado. Por una parte, el gobierno otorga concesiones mineras encima de nuestros territorios. Por otra parte, la minería ilegal amenaza las vidas, incluso hasta muertos, ¿no? Y creo que eso es un tema muy, muy preocupante, ¿no? Como conclusión, continuamos, hay una deforestación muy grande, ¿no? En el caso se ha podido pues ver que más de 120.000 hectáreas no depredados, contaminados, que esta tierra son inservibles y podemos pasar. Esos territorios ya son inservibles, una Amazonía depredada, ¿no? Y que como consecuencia de esta desorden de la actividad minera que pone en riesgo no solamente los territorios, como estamos viendo en estos momentos, sino la vida de nuestros pueblos, la vida de uno mismo como dirigente, ¿no? Esto es la cantidad, ¿no? De hectáreas depredados, contaminados, ¿no? En Mar de Dios. Y este es un estudio que ha hecho una institución que se llama CINCIA, ¿no? Que es un aliado de la Organización Indígena de Mar de Dios. Y si continuamos mirando, por ejemplo, la contaminación de mercurio, ¿no? Se ha podido determinar 185 toneladas, ¿no? de mercurio anual y con una cantidad de maquinarias que utilizan en la operación de esta actividad minera en Mar de Dios. Y ahí pues en los peces, niveles muy altos de mercurio en los peces, igual en el aire. Y esto es complicado y preocupante para nosotros porque los peces son dieta alimentaria para nosotros como pueblos indígenas porque mayormente nosotros vivimos en las orillas de los ríos, tomamos el agua y comemos los peces, ¿no? Y ahí es donde mercurio pues ha llegado hasta nuestros cuerpos y esto es sumamente preocupante para nosotros, ¿no? Entonces, en el año 2016 el gobierno del Perú ha reconocido, si podemos pasar, ha reconocido, ¿no? la gran preocupación de la contaminación de mercurio, ¿no? en la región de Mar de Dios, ¿no? Y ha decretado oficialmente estado de emergencia en algunas provincias de Mar de Dios porque ya no podía controlar este tema de la minería ilegal pero también ha determinado la grave problemática en la salud con el mercurio, ¿no? En parte, ¿no? de las comunidades, especialmente más afectados, pues nosotros los pueblos indígenas. Por ejemplo, se ha determinado con mayor afectación es la población, ¿no? de comunidades indígenas en Madre de Dios. Ahí pues la fuente de pescado, podemos pasar por favor, la fuente de pescado es el principal pues alimentos, ¿no? diarios que nosotros comemos, ¿no? los ríos que pescamos y que mayormente se ha determinado que las comunidades un poco más alejadas han sido más impactados porque los pescados no, nunca bajan hacia abajo, sino surcan río arriba y que las comunidades ahí comen, pescan ahí, comen dieta diaria su pescado y por eso somos mucho más afectados de estas contaminación y depredación de estos problemas de salud, ¿no? Continuamos. Desde el 2016, por ejemplo, hasta la actualidad, ¿no? Se sigue continuando con esta actividad, ¿no? En este tema del mercurio a gran escala, no se tiene una acción de monitorear en forma efectiva, ¿no? de la contaminación, de estos impactos de salud. Se ha determinado a través de un estudio de una universidad que muchos hermanos indígenas tienen mercurio, pero sin embargo no se ve que el gobierno tome una acción para prevenir, para ver qué se hace con estos hermanos y hermanas que ya tienen mercurio en su cuerpo, si no hay ninguna implementación de medidas de prevención, mitigación, ¿no? sobre este tema de contaminación en los ríos, en las comunidades de nuestra región de Madre de Dios. Y eso es sumamente preocupante y por eso es importante que FENAMAT pone estos temas en la CODE Minamata, ¿no? Ahora ya como AIDC también estamos poniendo estos temas en la CODE Minamata para desde ese nivel decir a los gobiernos que puedan hacer algo concreto para ayudar a mitigar, ayudar a prevenir, ¿no? el problema de salud que ocasiona pues la minería y el mercurio en esta parte de la Amazonía del Perú. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Julio. Thank you so much. I know you're even abroad now, but thank you for making time to share the powerful story. It's very impactful, no? It actually what you shared grounds today's discussion and shows like the real life impact, no, of the gaps in the Mercury Treaty. So thank you very much that that the lives of indigenous communities are impacted, your land, your food, your culture, identity, your very lives. And it reminds us that indigenous communities must be at the center of this conversation. Thank you very much, Julio. So friends, I'm sorry to say, but we've really run out of time. We do not have enough time to go through the questions that came in the chat box. But thank you so much for joining us today. As we begin to close our discussion, I hope it helped show that addressing mercury in ASGM, it's not really like an environmental task, no, but it's a matter of justice, it's a matter of human rights, it's a matter of protecting our health and the future generations. So we know, it was mentioned earlier, that the current measures have reduced mercury use in some sectors, but ongoing supply to ASGM remains a gap. So we need to end both legal and illegal mercury trade, phasing out mercury use in ASGM, and closing primary mercury mines. These are critical next steps to realizing the goals of the Minamata Convention. I'd like to thank again our distinguished panel of speakers. Thank you very much for leading the discussions, and thank you everyone for joining us. I now hand you back over to Geneva Environment Network. Diana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Leah. Thank you to all the speakers. We always learn a lot with our friends of IPAN, of EIA, and also thank you, Julio, for joining us and briefing us on what's going on. With that, I just wanted to now give the floor to Claudia, who will update you on 2 more events that we will be hosting as part of the online Minamata events this week. Claudia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diane, and thanks everyone for sharing your insights and recommendations on how to strengthen the Minamata Convention on Mercury. So in the next days, we will be holding other 2 Minamata online events, both on the 16th, so on Thursday. We will have an event together with the new Intergovernmental Science Policy Panels on Chemical Waste and Pollution, and another one reflecting on the impacts of mercury exposure on the rights of indigenous people and ways to address them. You can scan this QR code or find the information on our website and shortly in the chat of this event. And please join us in the upcoming days. And a few more events on the road to Minamata COP6. So we will be supporting the Minamata Secretariat for a special event taking place on the eve of the opening of the Minamata COP6. So on the Sunday before, at the venue of the Conference of the Parties, there will be this special event featuring a panel discussion with Rolex National Geographic Explorer Fernando Trujillo and Eileen Miyoko-Smith, Green Action in Japan, and to be followed by the screening of the film Amazonia, the New Minamata. And last but not least, please join us also at the Minamata Convention, where the Geneva Environment Network will be holding an exhibition booth titled Multilateral Geneva Cooperating to Beat Pollution, presenting Geneva as a global hub for the governance of hazardous substances, showcasing the work conducted by Geneva-based actors in tackling mercury pollution, and highlighting also the work we conducted with the Secretariat through our series on skin lightening products. So with this, thank you very much for joining us today, and see you soon at upcoming events. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Diana, Claudia, and everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
See
you.
you all
Thank
in
you.
Geneva.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good COP.